The first snow of winter had fallen heavy that week, coating the small town of Millfield in a thick, white silence. For most people, the snowfall brought cheer. Children built snowmen in their yards. Couples walked arm in arm down Main Street, and the air smelled faintly of pine and fireplaces. But for Jack Turner, the snow was just another reminder of how cold life could be. Jack was 34, a mechanic who worked long hours at a rundown garage on the edge of town. His hands were always stained with grease, his clothes permanently smelling of oil, and his face carried the weariness of a man who had been asked to endure more than most. His wife, Anna, had passed away when their daughter Lily was only 3 years old. That left Jack with a grief he could never quite bury and the responsibility of raising a little girl in a world that often felt merciless. Now, Lily was 7, bright-eyed, endlessly curious, and the light of Jack's life. But raising her alone hadn't been easy. Money was tight. Bills piled up faster than he could pay them, and there were nights when he skipped meals just so Lily could have enough. Still, Jack never let her see his struggle. Every morning he smiled, packed her lunch, and walked her to school through the snow, pretending that life was steadier than it really was. That night, as Jack closed up the garage and pulled his worn coat tighter around his shoulders, the world was still. Snowflakes drifted lazily under the streetlights, and the only sound was the crunch of his boots against the icy ground. His breath came out in small clouds, and he shoved his hands deep into his pockets, already imagining the warmth of home, where Lily would be waiting with her sketchbook, eager to show him another drawing. But then he heard it, a faint sound, softer than the wind, quieter than the rustle of snowflakes against his hood. A whisper. Jack froze, his brow furrowing. He turned his head, but the street was empty. Only the gentle fall of snow met his eyes. He shook it off, blaming fatigue. He was exhausted, after all, and his mind played tricks on him when he hadn't slept well. But as he walked further, there was again a whisper, fragile, almost like a child's voice carried on the wind. Jack's heart quickened. He stopped and strained his ears. Help! The word was so faint he almost thought he'd imagined it. But then it came again, clearer this time. Please? Jack's instincts roared to life. He turned toward the sound and spotted something strange. A small dark shape huddled against the side of an alleyway, half buried in snow. His stomach twisted. He hurried forward, boots slipping on the icy ground, until he reached it. It wasn't a shape. It was a child, a boy, no older than 5 or 6, curled up against the cold bricks, his thin jacket dusted white with snowflakes. His lips were trembling, his face pale, and his eyes, wide, scared, and brimming with tears, blinked up at Jack. Jack's chest tightened. "Hey!" he said gently, kneeling down. "Hey, buddy. It's okay. I've got you." The boy's voice cracked, barely a whisper. "CC cold." Jack didn't waste another second. He scooped the boy into his arms, feeling how frighteningly light he was, how his little body shook violently against the bitter cold. Without thinking twice, Jack zipped open his coat and tucked the boy inside, pressing him close to his chest for warmth. "You're safe now," Jack murmured, his own breath fogging. "I've got you. Don't worry." The boy clung weakly to Jack's shirt, his tiny fingers gripping as if afraid to let go. Jack hurried down the street, his mind racing. Who was this child? Where had he come from? Why was he out here alone in the snow? But all those questions could wait. The boy needed warmth, food, and safety. By the time Jack reached his small apartment, his arms ached from carrying the boy. But he didn't stop. He kicked open the door, and Lily looked up from the couch, where she had been coloring. "Daddy," she said, eyes widening. "Who's that?" Jack carefully set the boy on the couch and rushed to grab blankets. "Get me the thick blanket, sweetheart," he instructed, his voice urgent but calm. "And some water." Lily, quick and helpful, did as she was told. Together, they wrapped the boy in layers of blankets, rubbing his arms to warm him. Jack heated some soup on the stove, spoon-feeding the boy slowly until color began to creep back into his cheeks. "What's your name, buddy?" Jack asked softly. The boy sniffled. "Ethan." "Okay, Ethan," Jack said gently. "You're safe now. We'll take care of you." Lily sat cross-legged beside the couch, her eyes wide with concern. "Hi, Ethan," she said shyly. "I'm Lily. Do you like to draw?" The boy gave a small nod. It was the first sign of comfort Jack had seen from him. That night, Jack let Ethan sleep in his bed, while he and Lily curled up on the couch. He stayed awake for hours, listening to boy's breathing, making sure it stayed steady. Something about the child stirred something deep in him, a mix of protectiveness and sorrow. He remembered the helplessness he had felt when Anna died, how small Lily had looked in his arms when he realized he'd be raising her alone. And now, seeing Ethan, he couldn't help but think, what if this were Lily? The next morning, Jack called the police to report that he had found a lost child. Officers arrived quickly, asking Ethan questions, but the boy remained shy and clung to Jack's side. He answered only in fragments. His mother's name was Grace. They had been visiting Millfield, and somehow he had gotten separated in the snow. As soon as the officers heard the name, their expressions shifted. Grace Whitmore, one of the wealthiest women in the state, owner of half the properties in Millfield. Ethan Whitmore was her son. The police promised they would contact her immediately, but before they left, one of them looked at Jack and said quietly, "You probably saved this boy's life last night." Jack glanced down at Ethan, who still clung to his hand. The words sank deep. When Grace Whitmore arrived at Jack's apartment later that day, the room seemed to shrink under her presence. She was tall, elegant, wrapped in a fur coat, with diamonds on her ears that glittered even in the dim light of Jack's small living room. Her eyes, however, were frantic, searching desperately for her son. "Ethan!" she cried the moment she saw him. She rushed forward, scooping him into her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she held him tight. "My baby, my sweet boy. Oh, thank God." Ethan hugged her back, but then turned his head toward Jack. "Daddy Jack," he whispered softly. Jack blinked, startled. Grace followed her son's gaze, her eyes falling on Jack for the first time. She looked him up and down. The worn clothes, the tired eyes, the grease still faintly marking his hands. For a moment, Jack braced himself for judgment, but then Grace's expression softened. "You saved my son," she said, her voice trembling. I don't know how to thank you." Jack shook his head. "I just did what anyone would have done. He was out there, alone. I couldn't just leave him." But Grace stepped closer, her eyes filling again. "No, you didn't just help him. You gave him warmth, safety, and love. That's more than most people would have done, especially for a stranger." Ethan tugged on her sleeve. "Can we stay with Daddy Jack and Lily a little longer?" Grace smiled faintly at her son, then looked at Jack. "Maybe we can." In the weeks that followed, Grace didn't forget Jack. She returned often, at first to let Ethan visit Lily, but soon for coffee, for conversations, for reasons she didn't even try to disguise. Jack found himself opening up in ways he hadn't in years, and Grace, despite her wealth and status, revealed her own loneliness. Her world of glitter and business had left her with little genuine connection until now. And slowly, what began as gratitude grew into something more. For Jack, the whisper in the snow that night had led him not just to a boy in need, but to a new beginning he never imagined possible. A chance at love, stability, and a family healed in unexpected ways. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they come softly, like a whisper carried on the snow.